My wife brought her affair to a beach party, so I ended our marriage with one sentence that silenced the shore: if you stay with me until the very end, you'll understand why a crowded beach dinner in Naples went so quiet that all I could hear was the surf and my own breathing. And before I tell you how my marriage ended in front of a table full of wealthy strangers pretending not to stare, please help support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and leaving a comment with what you would have done in my place. The sentence that finally killed my marriage was spoken in our bedroom, while the ceiling fan turned lazily overhead, and the last of the Florida sun bled through the plantation shutters in thin golden bars. Misty stood in front of the mirror fastening an earring, her reflection calm and composed, as if she were getting ready for a charity dinner, instead of stepping over the body of a marriage that still had my name on it. She wore a white linen dress that caught the warm light and made her look softer than she was. On the counter beside her sat a bottle of perfume she only wore when she wanted to be remembered after she left a room. She didn't turn around when she said it. "If you ask where I'm going," she said, "I'm going to lie. So I'd rather not do that tonight." My laptop was open on my knees, some spreadsheet glowing uselessly against the dimming room. I had been pretending to work, because pretending was easier than admitting. I had been waiting for this moment for months. I looked at her reflection and said nothing. Then she picked up the perfume, sprayed her throat once and finished it. "I'm seeing someone else, John." No trembling voice. No tears. No apology wrapped in self-pity. Just a clean sentence, delivered with the confidence of someone who had already rehearsed my reaction and grown bored of it. Outside, a sprinkler clicked rhythmically across the neighbor's lawn. Somewhere downstairs, the refrigerator compressor kicked on. The entire house stayed horribly normal. That was the part that got me. Not the words. The stillness around them. The world didn't crack open. The walls didn't tilt. My wife simply told me she belonged partly to someone else in the same tone she might have used to remind me we were low on coffee beans. For 6 years, Misty had known how to control a room better than anyone I had ever met. She could sweeten tension with a smile, redirect criticism with a joke, and make selfishness sound like growth if she gave it enough expensive language. By the time she said those words out loud, she had probably been saying them to herself for a long time. I had not been surprised. Hurt, yes. Humiliated, more than I wanted to admit. But not surprised. For almost a year, the air between us had changed. She had grown careful with her phone in that obvious way people think is subtle. Face down on the counter. Screen brightness turned low. Messages answered in the laundry room or on the back lanai, with the sliding door cracked just enough for her voice to disappear into the night. She started calling ordinary things by dramatic names. Boundaries. Emotional alignment. Evolving needs. I asked about counseling once. Then twice. I suggested a weekend away. I asked, as gently as a man can ask without cutting his own dignity open, whether there was someone else. Misty always answered like I was behind the times. "Not everything is betrayal, John. That's what people say when it is." So when she finally admitted it, my pulse didn't race. It slowed. That's the part no one ever understands when they ask how I stayed so calm. I didn't become calm because I was strong. I became calm because the truth had finally stepped into the light, and once that happened, pain began hardening into structure. "All right," I said. That made her turn from the mirror. Her face changed slightly. She had expected a scene. Not necessarily because she wanted one, but because scenes are useful. Scenes make both people look guilty. Scenes blur the lines. A shouting husband becomes something you can point to later. "That's all?" she asked. I closed my laptop and set it on the nightstand with more care than the moment deserved. "You've been gone a while," I said. She narrowed her eyes then, just a little. "Don't do that silent thing," she said. "I'm being honest. There are few things more insulting than someone wanting credit for confessing only after they've already moved on." I nodded. "Drive safe." She stared at me, waiting for the delayed explosion. When it didn't come, she picked up her clutch and left. I listened to her heels move down the hall, then the staircase, then the tile downstairs. A few seconds later, I heard the front door open and close. Then the car in the driveway. Then silence. Not complete silence. In Florida, there's always something. A distant engine. A vent. The insects beginning outside. But inside me, something locked into place. Then I got up, walked into my office, opened a drawer and took out an empty folder. The next month taught me something ugly and useful. When one person has already emotionally left the marriage, they become sloppy in small ways because they no longer believe the person at home is dangerous. Misty had always thought my steadiness meant passivity. She mistook patience for blindness. She mistook kindness for a lack of nerve. She was wrong on all 3 counts. I didn't hire a private investigator. I didn't follow her car. I didn't go through her phone while she slept. I did something simpler. I watched. I read what our shared finances had already been trying to tell me. There were restaurant charges in Naples on evenings. She claimed she was in Fort Myers for networking dinners. A resort valet receipt from Marco Island on a Thursday. She told me she was too tired to come home after an industry mixer. 2 cocktails at a beachside hotel bar. Spa charges on a card that was supposed to be for household use only. A forwarded confirmation email for a dinner reservation that hit an old shared inbox she had forgotten still existed. Then there were the smaller details, the ones that made my skin go cold in a way rage never could. The smell of unfamiliar cologne, faintly lingering on the inside of her car when I moved it from the driveway. Sand in the passenger footwell from a beach she claimed she hadn't visited. A photograph she posted and deleted within minutes, just a harmless sunset shot at first glance, until I zoomed in and saw a reflected silhouette in the restaurant window beside her. A man's shoulder, his wristwatch, the line of his jaw turned toward her. His name was Grant Ellison. Divorced, developer, permanent tan, the kind of man who wore pale blue linen shirts, unbuttoned 1 button too far, and moved through Naples like sidewalks and women had been privately deeded to him years ago. I learned his name not because I went looking for gossip, but because in a place like Naples, gossip comes to you wearing loafers and holding a wine glass. I printed everything: hotel receipts, account activity, reservation emails, photographs, dates. I arranged them with labeled tabs in a dark blue folder from a stationery store downtown, the kind that sells monogrammed paper and expensive pens for people who still think elegance can disguise cruelty. Pain turned into paperwork. Paperwork turned into certainty. Misty noticed the change in me, but not correctly. She read my silence as surrender. Once the affair was spoken aloud, she seemed lighter, almost cheerful. She moved around the house like she'd already crossed some difficult bridge and expected me to catch up eventually. She hummed in the kitchen, ordered new things for the house, asked me to sign for packages, commented on my shirts, talked about future plans with the detached efficiency of someone rescheduling a dentist appointment, not dismantling a marriage. At breakfast, she would stand barefoot on the cool tile, slicing fruit while messages lit up her phone screen beside the cutting board. She no longer bothered hiding the smiles. That was the remarkable part. Once she believed the truth was out, she no longer felt obligated to protect me from its texture. One Sunday afternoon, while standing at the island eating chilled watermelon with a fork, she mentioned a beach gathering the following Friday. Brandon and Elise are hosting sunset drinks and dinner, she said. A bunch of people are going. I kept drying a plate. Sounds nice, she glanced up. I need you to come, not want. Need. I looked at her then. She sighed, already impatient with the inconvenience of my humanity. It'll be easier if we don't make things public before they have to be, she said. Just come, be normal, and get through the evening. That was when I understood exactly what she thought I was for. Not a husband. Not even an obstacle. A final prop. A respectable silhouette in linen and loafers, standing in the right place long enough for her transition into another life to appear graceful. What time? I asked. The relief on her face was instantaneous. 7:30. She thought she had managed me again. Friday came wrapped in the sticky, expensive beauty of a Gulf Coast evening. The air smelled faintly of salt and sunscreen even after sunset. The sky over the water looked brushed in lavender and pale fire. Brandon and Elise had rented out a private section of beach, behind one of those enormous houses that always seemed to have more balconies than people. There were cocktail tables in the sand covered in white linen. Lanterns staked low to the ground. Long dinner tables dressed with candles inside hurricane glass. Servers in rolled sleeves carrying trays of sparkling wine. Beyond all of it, the Gulf exhaled in slow dark waves. Misty arrived beside me but not with me. That distinction matters. She wore a cream dress that moved beautifully in the wind. Her hair was pinned loosely, and every now and then a strand came free and brushed her cheek. She looked like the kind of woman people forgive in advance. As we crossed the sand, she leaned slightly toward me and murmured, "Please don't make this difficult." I looked toward the water. "I'm not the one doing that," I said. Grant was already there, bourbon in hand, laughing at something Brandon had said. He had the relaxed posture of a man who believed he belonged wherever money gathered. When Misty saw him, something changed in her expression. Not enough for anyone else. Enough for me. He came over a few minutes later and offered his hand. "John," he said, smiling. "Good to see you." I shook it. Grant, his grip was steady. His face was composed. He wasn't theatrical or oily. Men like that almost never are. They rely on the fact that decent people don't want to believe something ugly can arrive wearing such clean clothes. Dinner unfolded in courses and little polished conversations. Property values, summer travel, a new club expansion, charity board gossip. I spoke when spoken to, drank slowly, and watched Misty work the room with that bright social confidence I used to admire and later learned to fear. She laughed too quickly at Grant's remarks, touched his forearm once, looked at me twice with a tiny flicker of triumph, like she was checking whether I was still willing to stand there and help carry the fiction. I was, for a little longer. The moment came over dessert. Someone had brought out miniature lemon tarts and dark chocolate cakes that were more sculpture than food. Champagne glasses caught the candlelight. The wind had softened. The room, if a beach can be called a room, had reached that dangerous point in an upscale evening where everyone feels warm, expensive, and just loose enough to say the wrong thing. Brandon raised a toast. Elise added something about friendship. Misty stood with her glass in hand, smiling the smile she used when she wanted admiration to look effortless. I think, she said, that there comes a point in adult life when pretending stops being noble. There were a few soft laughs. She glanced at me. Some people confuse stability with love, she went on, her voice light and almost amused. And routine with passion. I'm just grateful I'm finally honest enough not to do that anymore. That was the thing about Misty. Even humiliation came out of her sounding elegant. The table went very still. No one looked directly at me at first. That's how people behave when shame enters a room by invitation. I folded my napkin once and set it beside my plate. Then I looked at my wife and said, very calmly, "You stop being my wife in private, Misty. I'm not going to help you pretend in public." The silence after that was immediate and total. The candles flickered inside their glass sleeves. Somewhere behind us, the surf rolled in and broke. A server froze with a tray against his chest. Misty's face emptied. I reached into my jacket, took out the blue folder, and placed it gently on the tablecloth beside her champagne glass. "It has the hotel charges, the dinner receipts, the photos, the dates, and my attorney's card," I said. "You don't need to perform honesty anymore. You can try the real thing." Grant looked down. Misty did not. "John," she said in a low voice, "don't do this here." I held her gaze. "You already did." Then I stood, buttoned my jacket, nodded once to Brandon and Elise, and walked away from the table. I did not hurry. I did not look back. I carried my shoes in one hand by the time I reached the darker stretch of sand near the access path, and I remember the coolness of it under my feet and the strange lightness in my chest. Not triumph. Release. The divorce took less than a year. Misty cycled through every version of regret available to a person who still believed regret could bargain. First she was indignant, then wounded, then suddenly reflective. She accused me once of humiliating her, which would have been funny if it weren't so revealing. People like Misty always think the moment their image cracks is the moment the cruelty begins. We sold the house. I moved into a smaller place east of the water with a screened porch and a quiet kitchen. I bought new towels, new plates, a decent coffee grinder. I slept better there than I had in years. That's one of the ugly little truths of betrayal. Sometimes the life after it is quieter not because you won, but because the performance finally ended. Almost a year later, Misty called and asked to meet for coffee. We sat outside at a cafe near 3rd Street South on a bright morning that made everything look cleaner than it was. She looked beautiful still, but changed. Less polished, more careful. She said what people always say when the fantasy collapses. "I know I hurt you." She said what they say when consequences strip away the glamour. What I thought I wanted wasn't real. Then she reached across the table, fingertips near mine, and asked the question without quite daring to finish it. "Could we ever?" I moved my hand back before she could touch it. "I believe you're sorry," I said. Her eyes filled. "But I don't live there anymore." She stared at me for a long second, and in that moment I think she finally understood something she had missed our entire marriage. Silence is not emptiness. Sometimes it is the sound a man makes when he has already left. I paid for my coffee, stood up, and walked out into the heat. The sky over Naples was painfully blue. Palms moved in the wind. Somewhere not far off, I could smell salt from the Gulf. That was the morning I realized revenge had never really interested me. Not the messy kind. Not the kind that keeps you chained to the person who broke you. True revenge is quieter than that. It is learning to sleep again. It is making coffee in a kitchen that belongs only to you. It is no longer rehearsing old conversations in the dark. It is understanding that some people ruin themselves so thoroughly, You don't need to lift a finger. All you have to do is stop standing in the wreckage with them.